I think it's a very different world today. He will have to be comfortable in his own skin. And by that I mean, being authentic, not just to Singaporeans, but to Singapore's friends and partners outside of Singapore. But yeah, he has spoken of, the need for Singapore or for the government to make pro-Singapore choices, right? There's been much talk, given the geopolitical rivalry, a very intense one between China and the US, for which, Southeast Asia, Singapore's backyard, is the proxy theatre for some of these intense rivalry. So Singapore will continue to have to walk, that delicate line. And I think we will always want to ensure that both China and the United States continue to be invested in Southeast Asia, in Singapore. And by that I mean, having a stake in the success, stability, prosperity of this region. Because I think that's the only way, that we can ensure, that conflict doesn't break out. Because if there's conflict in this region, then I think Singapore will face tremendous headwinds, right? Because we are a country, a city-state that is heavily dependent on trade and investments, and anything that would upset the free flow of goods and services, or any bifurcation, for example, in the technology arena, all that will have a very detrimental impact on Singapore's economy. Singaporeans desire more political competition and more political diversity. And I think they probably take the view that if we have a two-party or a multi-party system, that governance could be even better. So I think Mr. Wong is taking over at a time where he cannot assume, that the ruling party will continue to dominate at the general elections. He will have to be able to persuade Singaporeans, that one-party dominance does have its advantages, whether that means being able to plan long-term, without the government of the day, thinking in terms of electoral cycles. He will have to show how one-party dominance, will ensure that good governance can continue, that there will be adequate checks and balances. So the question is whether he will be able to manage the pace of political change in Singapore. If he doesn't, right, then we are suddenly looking at the pace of change being dictated to his party, to his government. And that would be something that I think will hit at the PAP's political longevity. Well, if we go by, the COVID-19 pandemic, right, where he was the co-chair of the multi-ministry task force, I think he has shown that he has this ability to communicate. But the question now is, outside of a crisis setting, will he be able to communicate just as well? Will he be able to persuade just as well? Will he be able to get people, will he be able to rally Singaporeans behind him? He is quite confident on social media. So I think that is a plus when it comes to engaging with younger Singaporeans. But he will have also to do with, he also have to focus a lot on walking the ground, engaging Singaporeans, older Singaporeans who may not be digital natives, being able to communicate just as well. So it was a very low-key cabinet reshuffle, and I think, with all the ministers, remaining in their portfolios. So I think it does suggest that Mr. Wong wants his team to hit the ground running, because time is of the essence. We're looking at 15 months left to the current parliamentary term, and I think, he's very conscious that they need to get their report card to present to the people in as good a shape as possible. But I think in appointing, you know, his deputy prime ministers who are 12 and 14 years older than him, I think he's also signaling, you know, that his first cabinet is very much about stability and continuity, even as there is that generational change of prime ministers. And I think this is something that he wants to put forth at the general election, which must be held by November 2025. And when you look at Mr. Wong and his two deputies, they're actually quite familiar faces of Singapore because the recently appointed Deputy Prime Minister Gan Kim Yong was his co-chair on the multi-ministry task force. And they were the sort of faces that Singaporeans have become comfortable, familiar with. And his other Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Heng Swee Keat, was the finance minister during the COVID period. And Mr. Heng oversaw many supplementary budgets, to enable Singapore, to deal with the challenges thrown, by the pandemic to lives, to livelihoods. So I think, he's trying to convey that, these are steady pairs of hands. These are people with the experience. These are the people who have been tested. These are the people who have proven themselves, and I think in some ways it is quite a brilliant strategy, although there were expectations, that he would appoint one of his contemporaries, as his deputy. But I think he is quite focused, I think, on gaining a sound mandate from Singaporeans. And I think that's where, that's how he has positioned, his first cabinet lineup.